I haven't slept well and I don't feel like it, but I have to bring the news even in this state to my dear viewers. You heard me wrong, the Dark playtest has been announced in Steam this week. There's just one thing, it's not Dark and Darker, it's Dark. That is, it's a clone of our favorite. On your screens you can see the gameplay video. Yes, many effects are missing, frames are not finalized and so on, but you must agree that there is a huge similarity with Dark and Darker, right down to the frames when pointing the cursor, chests, lighting, and so on. Which got me thinking, what if Iron Mace have realized that Darker's trials can develop unpredictably and it's fine if they get lucky and it ends quickly, but what if they don't? They risk losing their audience. Especially if competitors don't sit still, and why would anyone want to sit still when there's a convenient opportunity to bypass Darker? As we know, Iron Mace have already made money from selling coffee paraphernalia. There may also be an as yet unnamed investor. In any case, what prevented Iron Mace from creating, for example, a fictitious development studio registered to a no-name dummy? Create a separate Discord server, YouTube channel, etc.? I'll answer you, nothing prevents you from doing so. Many people register their companies, financial accounts, and so on in certain countries and do it not just for fun, but because of favorable for investment legislation of these countries. For example, oligarchs who hide their money in Cyprus. Lawyers hired by Iron Mace or their acquaintances could have suggested such a workaround to them. Of course, to state this publicly is impossible, otherwise Nexon will immediately sue the new development studio and clone the game. However, in case Iron Mace, through a front company, creates a successful clone that will be a replacement for Dark and Darker during the trials, what will prevent Iron Mace, when the trials are over, from shutting down the clone and thus regaining its audience? Or, in case of special success, even promote the clone officially. If they lose the courts, they'll fade into oblivion, but the clone will live and thrive relatively safely. Relatively safe unless, of course, Nexon watches this video of mine and decides to thoroughly check the developers of all Dark and Darker clones, and it should be checked not just formally by documents, but in practice, which, in fact, is impossible. That is, the studio can be registered anywhere, while employees can work remotely and some of them may not be officially registered at all. Who would give Nexon access to all the inside information? If the studio was not in Korea, the US, or countries with similar copyright laws? The question is rhetorical. No one is going to give Nexon access. I want to emphasize that all of this is just my humble fantasy, an analysis based on imagination. I am not betting that any of the Dark and Darker clones, including Dark, is secretly being made by Iron Mace developers, and I ask you not to believe, and also not to transfer money to any of the clones under any circumstances, as they could be scammers. Nevertheless, there will be a playtest as early as this week. Of course, it's impossible to make any worthy competitor to our favorite in such a short period of time, but maybe it's just a test run? In any case, it's obvious that the multi-million-dollar success of Dark and Darker in terms of audience has inspired so many developers. We don't know about the many clone projects that are already in development. It could very well be that we will see a worthy competitor. A clone is not necessarily worse. The same arc has earned itself a lot of audience, although in many respects it is a copy of Rust. All kinds of Overwatch, League of Legends and others, initially copying Dota 2, were able to grow and develop into truly unique, separate projects. Of course, I'd like Dark and Darker specifically. I was the very first to sound the alarm, including on English language YouTube, when Nexon had just a little bit shown its nose. At that time many people did not believe me, saying that Iron Mace would smear and all this is not serious. Now, when Iron Mace doesn't dare to say a word for fear of prosecution, many people have gone to the other extreme, everything is bad, we are doomed and so on. I'm sure that if Dark and Darker doesn't come out, there will definitely be a worthy analog. Such popularity, such an unplowed field, they won't just let it go. We suffer because it's a matter of time. Yes, not all at once, probably most of the clones will be empty as always. Time will tell.